Hey, my little cupcakes, I have a great story. Seaglass Summer. Here we go. Hope you like it. On a little adventure. Some years ago, a boy named Thomas spent the summer at his grandmother's island cottage. Here's a boy at his grandmother's island cottage, enjoying himself. Early one morning, Thomas's grandmother gave him a magnifying glass. This belonged to your grandfather, she said. Thomas liked the way the magnifying glass made every grain of sand look as big as a rock. He liked the dark clamshells. That dark clamshells became swirling mazes of black, gray, and white under the glass. So his grandmother gave him the magnifying glass. He went and looked at seashells and other things, and he liked the way it looked. So it looked so different. Thomas's grandmother picked up something from the rocky shore. "What did you find?" Thomas asked. She opened her hand, a piece of sea glass. "It doesn't look like glass." Grandmother placed it in Thomas's hand. "Years ago, something made of glass was dropped into the sea, and after being broken and tossed in the salt water and sand, the pieces turned smooth and cloudy." Thomas ran his fingers around the rounded edges, then held the green glass to the morning sun. "Where do you think it came from?" "I'm not sure," Grandmother said, "but your grandfather used to say that each piece of sea glass has a story of its own." That night, with the sea glass on the table beside his head, Thomas dreamed of a shipyard long ago. So they went for a walk in the ocean or by the sea, and his grandmother gave him a piece of sea glass that had washed ashore. Kellen wiggled through the crowd, hoping for a better view. He and Papa waited at the shipyard for the ceremony to begin. Over the heads of the people, a huge Navy destroyer, a powerful mass of iron and steel, ready for battle, and held together with the sweat and hard work of many craftsmen, rose from the deck. "Did you really build her, Papa?" Papa laughed. "Not by myself, son. Are you proud?" "Proud as a man can be." On the platform, men and ladies, dressed as if they were Saturday morning, gathered at the bow, dressed as if it were Sunday morning, gathered at the bow of the enormous ship. "What's happening?" Kellen whispered, when an elegant woman stepped forward. "Shh! Mrs. Knox is about to speak," Papa answered, and then placed a finger to his lips. So his father had helped build a ship, and they were all dressed to christen the ship. Kellen stood on his tiptoes just in time to see Mrs. Knox swing a bottle of champagne. "I christen the ship the U.S. Frank Knox," she shouted over the cheers of the crowd. As a green glass bottle shattered into 100 pieces, and fell into the water. So this ship had just been built, and they christen it before it goes on any voyage. And Mrs. Knox right there took a bottle of champagne and broke it, and it fell into the ocean, the pieces of glass. Each morning that summer, Thomas and his grandmother hurried down to the beach to see what the tide had left behind. Once Thomas found a real treasure, a large chunk of sea glass with a few letters, "Sun," just barely raised on its surface. Thomas wondered what word the letters might have been a part of and what story this piece of glass might tell. When Thomas slipped between the cool sheets at night, he dreamed of wind and waves and a terrible storm. So Thomas is dreaming at night about the sea glass that he and his grandmother are finding. So he's fallen asleep, and he's having another dream. The dream about the ship was also a dream, being christened. The captain's shouted orders could barely be heard over the roar of the wind as men scurried to their stations. "Lower the sails!" But the white sails that had been once billowed lay in tatters. The mast creaked and groaned against an angry wind. The schooner listed to starboard, and sailors slid across its flooded deck. The storm raged, and the brave men fought until they heard the captain's desperate cry, "Abandon ship!" The captain stayed with his vessel until every last sailor was safe. Then he, too, boarded a lifeboat and headed for shore. Oh, so they had a storm, and it tore up the ship, so they had to abandon it and leave on a life vessel right here. So he got everyone off, and they had to leave the ship. Below the deck of the mighty ship, pots and pans crashed to the galley floor. Shelves of canned wax beans and peaches were toppled, and one mason jar after another shattered. When a ferocious wave came up over the bow of the schooner, it took the ship and all its contents to the bottom of the sea. So the storm was so rough that it came into this boat, and it made it sink to the bottom of the sea, and everything was destroyed. Throughout the summer, Thomas' favorite days were Seaglass days, and his favorite nights were Seaglass nights. As the summer days grew slowly shorter, Thomas's grandma began to prepare the cottage for autumn, and Thomas continued to comb the shore for more of the sea stories. One morning, grandmother said, "We'll leave for the mainland early tomorrow." As the osprey soared overhead, they descended the staircase to the beach one last time. Thomas hoped to find one more piece of sea glass. He hoped to have one last exciting dream. He searched and searched, but all Thomas found that day were rocks and broken clamshells. So here's Thomas trying to find some more sea glass, but he didn't find anything that day. He's getting ready to go back to the mainland. He's on an island right now. Maybe Martha's Vineyard or something. As he lay in bed one last night, Thomas could smell the salt of the ocean. He could hear the whisper of the wind. He looked at grandfather's magnifying glass on the bedside table. Perhaps he'd dream of his grandfather. Finally, his eyelids became heavy. That night, Thomas dreamed of nothing. So here's Thomas sleeping, but he wasn't dreaming. Not that he remembered. In the morning, Thomas gathered his favorite summer treasures: a smooth beach rock, 2 clamshells, grandfather's magnifying glass, and his precious sea glass, and boarded a ferry. When the ferry lurched forward, he lost his balance, and grandfather's magnifying glass slipped from his fingers onto the big boat's wooden deck. With a heavy heart, Thomas began to pick up what was left of the shattered magnifying glass. Then grandmother helped him wrap the pieces in his handkerchief. He stood and watched as the island disappeared from view. Thomas's Seaglass Summer was over. So he dropped grandpa's magnifying glass, and his grandmother helped him wrap up the pieces that were left of it. But he was sorry that it was broken. Not so many years ago, a girl named Annie arrived at her family's cottage by the sea. Annie was a collector of all sorts of treasures. At home, she collected acorn cups and pine cones and meadow flowers. At the seashore, she found different things to collect. She delighted in clamshells and the smoothest rocks. And one day, when Annie was exploring the shallow tide pools near the cottage, she found an unusual piece of sea glass. So here's Annie, and she found an unusual piece of sea glass that day. Oops. Here she is looking, and she found it. Papa, Tom, Annie raced to her grandfather's beach chair and placed a new treasure in his hand. "Look what I found!" Papa Tom lifted the piece of sea glass to the sun. Its edges were smooth and worn, and the once clear glass was now a cloudy white. But in Papa Tom's hand, it felt strangely familiar. "You know, they say each piece of sea glass has a story all its own," he said. "Just imagine what tale this glass could tell." That night, with her treasures by her side, Anna slept soundly. So Anna found this piece of sea glass that was clear and cloudy, and she ran and showed her grandfather, and he said, "Each piece of sea glass has a story." And she felt, as she was sleeping, she's dreaming of Thomas with his magnifying glass. The end. Hope you liked it.